Today, we'll dive deep into the depths of time to explore how humanity's stories have been distorted over the centuries. Have you ever considered that the history we know might not be as accurate as we think? In this episode, we're investigating the phenomenon of historical distortion and understanding how and why certain truths have been shaped or hidden over time. Get ready to challenge your perception of history by questioning and reevaluating what you thought you knew. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more intriguing explorations like this one. Let's uncover together what really happened and how it has shaped the present we live in. Shall we begin? The legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table is one of the richest and most enchanting tapestries of European mythology, blending historical facts with fantasy and epic morality. The central figure, Arthur, may have been rooted in a real British leader who, according to ancient chronicles, led the resistance against the Saxon invaders in the 5th or 6th century. However, this originally obscure historical figure served as a blank canvas on which layers of myth and narrative were skillfully painted by subsequent writers. Arthur's transformation into a legendary king is largely due to the works of medieval writers like Geoffrey of Monmouth in his 12th century Historia Regum Britannia, History of the Kings of Britain. Geoffrey introduced many elements now synonymous with King Arthur, including the wizard Merlin and the foundation of an idealized court at Camelot. These additions provided not just entertainment through their intriguing narratives of courtiers and knightly confrontations, but also offered examples of chivalric virtues and Christian morality, reflecting and reinforcing the ideals of medieval society. As the Arthurian stories were adopted and adapted across different cultures and languages, additional elements were woven into the myth. The concept of the Holy Grail, for example, was introduced later and became central in many Arthurian tales, symbolizing the quest for spiritual purity and divine redemption. This sacred object, associated with Christ and the Last Supper, provided a rich vehicle for exploring themes of faith, sin, and salvation, widely popularized in literature by authors like Chrétien de Troyes. The Curse of the Pharaoh, associated with the tomb of Tutankhamun, is one of the most enduring and fascinating myths to emerge from Egyptology. When Howard Carter and his team discovered the nearly intact tomb of the young pharaoh in 1922, the global media quickly took up every detail of the expedition. The death of Lord Carnarvon, one of the expedition's financiers, just 5 months after opening the tomb due to an infection caused by a shaving cut that worsened, provided fertile ground for rumors of an ancient curse. Newspapers and novelists were quick to connect his death to a supposed curse inscribed in the tomb, warning against disturbing the pharaoh's rest. In reality, there is no evidence that such a curse inscription exists on the walls of Tutankhamun's tomb. It is a purely fictional creation. The idea of curses associated with the tombs of pharaohs is not based on documented ancient Egyptian practices or beliefs, but was widely popularized by 20th century fiction writers and the press. The fascination with the exotic and mysterious, along with a public eager for supernatural stories, contributed to the creation and dissemination of this myth. The narratives about the curse served as a way to add a layer of intrigue and danger to the already dramatic archaeological discoveries. The myth of the curse was perpetuated and expanded due to its sensationalist appeal and commercial value. Stories of ancient curses have a timeless appeal, evoking a sense of mystery and an encounter between the past and the present, science and the supernatural. This narrative was particularly appealing during the era of imperialism and colonialism, when many in the West were fascinated and often consumed cultures they viewed as exotic or primitive. The curse functioned as an element of poetic justice for those who disturbed the remains of an ancient civilization, reflecting a form of retaliation against colonial exploitation. Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia, is a historical figure best known for his brutal method of execution, impaling. Known as Vlad the Impaler, his reputation for cruelty has spanned centuries, but it was greatly amplified and transformed by literature. The most famous of these transformations is Bram Stoker's Dracula, published in 1897. Although Stoker was inspired by Vlad's name and record of ruthless governance, the figure of Count Dracula, an aristocratic vampire who feeds on human blood, is a purely literary creation, with no roots in Vlad's actual deeds. Stoker's choice to transform Vlad the Impaler into a vampire stemmed from narrative needs and the Victorian fascination with the occult and the macabre. The Victorian era, in which Stoker wrote, was marked by an intense interest in the supernatural and the Gothic, as seen in many of the literary works of the time. Linking Vlad to such a feared and mystical creature as the vampire enhanced the dramatic appeal of the story, giving audiences the Gothic thriller they craved. Moreover, this association symbolizes the transformation of historical evil into something palpably malign and supernatural, capturing imaginations in a way that pure historical accounts rarely can. The lies, or inventions about Vlad around his transformation into Dracula, were widely accepted due to the fascination such stories hold for the public. The idea of a noble vampire who traverses the ages, combining historical brutality with supernatural horror, is far more appealing to popular culture than the reality of a 15th-century prince who defended his domain with extreme cruelty. These literary inventions serve to explore themes of immortality, horror, and the dualism between nobility and barbarity, providing a rich canvas for the exploration of human fears and fascinations. Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Ptolemaic Egypt, is often remembered for her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, two of the most powerful men in the Roman world. However, the popular image of Cleopatra as a deadly seductress owes much more to literary and cinematic dramatization than to historical facts. While it is true that her relationships with Caesar and Antony were personal, they were also deeply rooted in political and strategic considerations. Cleopatra saw alliances with these Roman leaders as essential to strengthening her political position and preserving Egypt's independence under growing Roman influence. Over the centuries, the narrative about Cleopatra has evolved to emphasize her supposed beauty and seductive power, overshadowing her abilities as a leader and diplomat. This transformation began with Roman writers like Plutarch, who described Cleopatra in terms of her personal relationships with Roman figures, not her political acumen. This representation has been widely accepted and perpetuated by Western literature and art, which often portrayed Cleopatra as an archetype of the femme fatale. This simplification and sexualization of her image served to reinforce gender stereotypes and divert attention from her competence and political achievements. The reason for the perpetuation of these lies or distortions around Cleopatra's figure is multifaceted. In part, these representations serve to make history more appealing and palatable for popular consumption, turning complex political exchanges into exciting dramas of love and betrayal. Additionally, there is a component of sexism in these narratives, where a powerful female leader is reduced to her relationships with men, minimizing her agency and political ability in favor of a more sensationalist and sexually charged story. The legend of El Dorado, which describes a mythical city or kingdom filled with gold, is a classic example of how myths and realities can intertwine, creating powerful narratives that drive human action. Originally, the term El Dorado referred to a ritual among the indigenous Muisca peoples in the region of present-day Colombia, where the chief was covered in gold dust during ceremonies at Lake Guatavita. However, with the arrival of Spanish conquistadors and their insatiable appetite for gold, the meaning of the word evolved to represent a fictional golden city, a land of unimaginable riches that awaited discovery. Europeans, driven by distorted and amplified reports of wealth and splendor, turned the legend into an obsession that propelled countless expeditions throughout the 16th and 17th centuries. Explorers like Sir Walter Raleigh and Francisco de Orellana risked their lives and fortunes, venturing into the interior of South America in search of a city they would never find. The legend of El Dorado became a powerful symbol of European desire for wealth and adventure, but also a cause of suffering and disaster for many who followed this mirage through dense jungles and dangerous conditions. The perpetuation of these stories about El Dorado was facilitated by the lack of geographical knowledge of the region and the European predisposition to believe in exotic wonders in the New World. The narratives about El Dorado served to justify colonial expansion and the exploitation of lands and indigenous peoples, presenting conquest as a noble quest for a lost paradise, rather than an act of aggression and greed. These accounts were often exaggerated or completely fabricated, but were accepted and even encouraged because they aligned with the ambitions and fantasies of Europeans at the time. The Wild West of America, as it is popularly known, is a mythological time and place in U.S. history, representing the 19th century frontier. Many of the stories that characterize this era, with its noon duels, lawless towns, and iconic figures like Billy the Kid and Wyatt Earp, have been greatly embellished and dramatized over time. While these narratives capture the public's imagination, they often distort the historical reality, turning complex events and figures into simple caricatures suitable for entertainment. Noon duels, for example, are one of the most dramatic and recognizable elements of the Wild West myth, but in reality, they were extremely rare. Most armed conflicts of the time were ambushes or saloon brawls that rarely occurred in such an organized or honorable manner as movies and novels suggest. The idea of lawless towns is also largely exaggerated. While there certainly were periods of disorder in new frontiers and developing towns, many places had rudimentary systems of law and order, and were not as chaotic as the legend suggests. The propagation of these myths was significantly influenced by popular entertainment, especially by 19th century dime novels and 20th century Hollywood films. These works sought to provide escapism and adventure, shaping public perception of the West in a way that emphasized drama and conflict. This created a lasting image of the West as a land of unlimited opportunities and constant dangers, a narrative that resonated with the spirit of independence and individualism so valued in American culture. And so we conclude our journey through the twists and turns of humanity's stories. I hope this video has offered a new perspective on how history is told, and sometimes retold, to fit the dominant narratives of different eras. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to leave your like, share with friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our future explorations. Your participation is crucial for us to continue unraveling the mysteries of our history. Let us know in the comments which part of history you think deserves a deeper investigation. And who knows, that might be the topic of our next video. Thank you for watching, and until next time.